Well, for the longest time, I've just sort of been an ally and an asset to the iRacing team, creating relationships and partnerships in motorsports to be able to create new licensing opportunities. And so there's a little bit of that going on, and trying to continue the relationships we already have with folks like NASCAR and development of the Coca-Cola series and all types of different things that we have going on in the works there, and the future of that relationship with NASCAR. What does that mean for not only the software, the sim, also projects that they can work on outside of the sim, such as developing and creating racetracks that we've seen them, we've seen iRacing be a part of some of the redesigns on some of the tracks we've had, or being able to come up with what racing might look like at the Coliseum and bringing that to reality. So I just trying to, not only maintain the strength of those partnerships and relationships, but also be in the middle of those conversations about how, trying to help the NASCAR executive understand really the potential and the advantages of working together. And so that's been something I've been preaching for a really, really long time. It's really starting to get a lot of traction. There is a lot of back and forth and trust and belief between iRacing and organizations and racing bodies such as NASCAR. So it's great to see. There's a lot of people really wrapping their arms around the idea that the sim racing is, more than just something you enjoy doing at home. It can be a real key partner to growing the sport as a whole. There's probably about 6 to 12 employees that have worked at Junior Motorsports that I met strictly through sim racing and through iRacing. And iRacing is a great community. That's one of the best things about sim racing and iRacing is the community. You may have disagreements about what happens on the racetrack, just like anyone else does out there racing cars. But in the end, you all are like-minded people that are there for the same reasons, and you all want to come back, and you're going to be back the next day to try it again. And there are going to be some really, really great experiences in sim racing that you're going to have with people, and you're going to create relationships and friendships with these people that you may never meet, or it may be decades or years before you actually see their face. There's been people that we've hired into our IT department, and there's obviously, you mentioned race car drivers, mechanics, engineers, our parts manager at Junior Motorsports, Lee Langley, I met through iRacing, sim racing. Wouldn't have met him otherwise. And so that has been one of the coolest things about the whole journey, is that even today, you're making new friendships. I've got a group of guys that I get on Discord with, and we race and league race together every Tuesday night. And some of them I've met just in the past year or two, and we have become, you become best friends. You really do. You get on there and you're like, let's race. I had a tough day today, man. What happened to you? Oh, well, this happened. You talk about your life experiences, and you really start to, you trade advice, about things going on in your lives, talking about your kids or your job or your whatever it is, and these people become friends of yours, real, genuine friends, right? That you're spending more time with them than anyone else outside of your family. So it continues to do that for me today. That's one of the best things about the whole thing. Well, the one challenge to the iRacing service is that it's continuously updated, and those updates, moving one little thing over here can change something way over here that's totally unintended, And so the dev team has an incredible job trying to make sure that one change doesn't have an unintended consequence on the other side somehow, some way. So even as we upgraded or overhauled or changed the 87s, you still got to keep an eye on it. You still got to keep a magnifying glass on that car, and every new build that comes out, you got to keep your ear to the ground on what people are saying about the car. Has it changed? Does it feel different? Does it drive different? Why would that be? Okay, we've had some updates and changes to the car, and how did that affect this? And why would it make that change? Or why would it give you that sensation? So, you know, when we overhauled the car, it wasn't like you would love it to be like, okay, that was nice, that's done, now we can turn our focus over here to something else, but you kind of always got to be watching that car, right, to make sure that it doesn't evolve and move away from what you intended it to be, because all these builds can have that sort of minute effect to a vehicle. But I wasn't quite sure if the cars were really driving the way I thought they should, and so it was a long story, but I'll shorten it up a little bit. I talked to Bobby Labonte, and he had driven those cars back in the early 80s, mid 80s, and he was an active user of the service, and that was an easy guy to get on his rig and say, hey man, give me your real opinion about them. And I took his feedback, went and talked to some crew chiefs, looked at some setup notes. I started plugging those setups into the sim. I started talking to some of the lead engineers here about some of the downforce numbers I was given by multiple crew chiefs that all were sort of comparing and similar. And we got some horsepower notes. I got real horsepower numbers from RCR, from some engines they did back then. And we compared that to where we were with the car in the software, made the adjustments, and crossed our fingers, right, for a good driving car and a more realistic experience. I talked to some of the setup builders and some of the guys that were responsible for it's a fixed setup series, so I talked to some of the setup builders about, hey, look at these setups that they were running back then. Look at some of the similarities and some of the ranges of springs they were using in the right front or the shocks, and let's try to stay in a box if we can, and not set the car up to go fast, but set the car up to feel realistic. Obviously, with everything we know since 1987, we can probably set that car up even with just the limit, just what we have with iRacing. We could probably use some new knowledge that we understand about cars and put springs and shocks and things in that setup and make this thing go way faster than it did in 1987. Half a second, even a second faster to a place like Charlotte. But let's use some of the parameters that they were only knowledgeable of in that time frame, and try to keep this car within that window, and not really use what we know today to really affect the way the car feels and drives. So that's kind of been the attitude toward keeping that car in its lane, if you will. And so that's a fun challenge, and I think having the connections I have in the NASCAR world allowed us to really get some of that information. And I will say that when I presented all of these numbers and all the data to the team here at iRacing, they went right to work. There wasn't any questions or debate, no hesitation. They plugged it in. We backed it up on Alpha a little bit, and everything seemed to work great. We were real happy with the feelings and sensations we were having from the car, and shipped it to members. And I can't be sure, but I think participation in the cars picked up quite a bit. A lot of people that I talked to say it's one of their favorite cars on the service.